Good evening. Welcome to the Jefferson County Board of Education regular meeting on Monday, September 25th, 2023. If you'd please join us for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. First up, is there a motion to approve the minutes from the regular board meeting held September 11th, 2023? Thank you, Ms. Ogden. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Bratton. Any discussion or questions? Hearing none, all in favor of approving the minutes from the regular meeting held September 11th, 2023, say aye.
Aye.
Oppose? Thank you. Citizens' comments. I don't believe we have any citizens' comments this evening. So next up is the consent agenda. Good evening, Mrs. Loring.
All right, I think I hear it. All right, good evening. There are no changes to the personnel actions as was presented to you this evening. I do want to call your attention to something that's a little bit different on the agenda in respect to following West Virginia code. There's a couple resignations that have a designation of a break of contract that I want to bring to your attention this evening.
And Mrs. Loring, what exactly, could you just clarify what break of contract is so everybody understands?
Sure. In West Virginia code, there is a provision where, for teacher contracts, that if a teacher is not fulfilling that employment term or leaving pretty early into the employment term, then the Board of Education can consider that separation to be specifically a break of contract, because that's essentially what the employee is doing is they're leaving before they finish that employment term, and that is a code section that applies for teacher contracts.
And these two employees have been notified that it is technically a break in contract and not just a resignation, correct?
Correct. And also in that code section, what it explains is that that the superintendent does not have to have the superintendent's full endorsement, and if it is noted by the board to be a break of contract, then that could affect the individual's ability to apply for future positions with this school district, and also an obligation to report that to the state superintendent, who can then hold the licensure for a full academic year.
Thank you. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Osborne. Is there a second? Thank you, Ms. Ogden. Any discussion or questions?
Yeah, I have a couple questions. So for number 41, I don't know if we should pull it and talk about it later, but there seems to be a discrepancy in whether or not it's a resignation based on the date, September 20th, or whether something else happened on that date. I was just sent an email a little bit ago, so that's what I'm referring to.
That's the, Mrs. Loring, that's one of the ones that you were referring to as an actual break in contract,
Correct, that is one of them. So we can pull that one for discussion if that, in executive session, if that's the will of the board.
And if we're going to do that, if we could pull, there was number 32.
Mrs. Loring, can I ask you a question? She said she received an email. Have you gotten anything that we need to consider an executive session for number 41?
41, I do have additional information to address that question in executive session. However, 32, I'm not really sure hesitation would be on that.
I don't think your microphones are
For
on.
me to discuss that publicly.
Testing. So if we're going to pull 41, should we pull 42 as well to discuss?
I think there's specific interests in 41. 42 doesn't have the same level of concern.
Okay, so Mr. Osborne, you had a motion to approve the consent agenda as is. Do you want to change it to amend it to pull number 41 and/or number 32?
I have no problem with pulling those and discussing those.
Okay. And Ms. Ogden, you second it. Are you okay with that?
Yeah.
All right, so right now there's a motion on the floor to approve the consent agenda, pulling number 41 and number 32 for executive session.
I have another concern about the consent agenda.
Okay?
Under the action of the approved of paid bills, that same legal organization that I keep mentioning keeps appearing. It's on the it's listed again. The invoice is dated July 5th, and so it doesn't match what's listed under legal services expenditure report. That's a second thing, but so that concerns me that we're still paying for these legal services.
The date of the invoice would have been July 5th. More than likely, that was for services done or completed in June. So that would have been,
Okay, all right, and it's fiscal year July 1st, right? Is that
correct.
When I saw those, they billed on the 5th. The other one is the Bowles Rice for $5,000. Is that how much we're paying for to go down to Charleston, or is that something else?
No, that's the amount of money we put toward the professional development opportunities that our folks avail themselves to. So that's paid, and then we go to the trainings or whatever needs to be done.
So that's $5,000 just for that presentation for the day and a half? For the couple hours? This isn't something separate. That's what that's for.
If you're referring to the board training in Charleston, that's paid to the West Virginia School Board Association. That's not paid to Bowles Rice. I'm not sure. That's something totally different.
I can get some additional information on that.
Yeah, because they're showing up again on the legal services expenditure. I think it's another $10,000, like a purchase order, which I don't know what that's for either. So those were my concerns about the consent agenda.
I would like to also add on the legal services expenditure report, there is an attorney's office that we use that's not listed, and that's Arnold and Bailey.
Well, you're talking about 5B, is that correct? You're not talking about the consent agenda.
Oh, okay, I'm
So,
on the wrong
well,
thing.
yeah,
Okay.
let's, one thing, yeah,
Okay, I'm sorry.
that's okay. All right, so right now we have a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda, removing number 41 and 32. Any further question or discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Opposed?
All right, thank you. Next up, we have the Deputy Superintendent of Operations update. Good evening, Mrs. White.
Good evening.
Good evening.
So as we recall, the board accepted the bid to construct the new Shepherdstown Elementary School. We requested of the SBA additional funds in the amount of $2,682,960 to aid in the funding of the new school. On September 18th, 2023, the West Virginia Board of Ed awarded us an additional SBA funding amount of $2,682,960. I'm sorry, $2,682,960 for the new Shepherdstown Elementary School. I was so excited I couldn't spit it out the second time. We want to thank our partners at the SBA for fully funding the request we made. We're the recipient of another grant. It's called a SAPI grant, and this grant is for the Paige Jackson Tribute Hall. So I want to take a few minutes to explain to you what the grant award is going to entail. This grant was fully funded as well. Black history is prevalent throughout Jefferson County, West Virginia. The Paige Jackson High School tribute exhibit is a room with such an account and is currently being updated for the first time in over 20 years. It was first dedicated in 1986 by the NAACP. The room is in the original high school building, which is now serving as the Jefferson County Board of Education office. The room is a permanent exhibit of the accomplishment and activities of the staff, teachers, and students of Paige Jackson High School. With recent funding, because of the bond, the classroom-sized space is being renovated with cabinets to protect fragile and essential artifacts, such as handwritten documents, photographs, books, trophies, and memorabilia of historical significance. The already acquired funding oversees the renovation of the existing room and the initial design and fabrication of exhibits. Hersick and Webster Creative Partners have been brought in as our stakeholder for engagement, artifact assessment, design, and development of exhibit panels and displays, and coordination of the build and installation of display elements. With the help of this grant, we wanted to help the Paige Jackson High School alumni fulfill its mission by honoring, acknowledging, and celebrating the school's heritage and history. We want to create something that can go beyond the exhibit room and instill in visitors of all ages a sense of place and meaning with Paige Jackson High School. Outside the exhibit room, space is dedicated to final thoughts that we want to leave each visitor with after visiting the room. This space will consist of a wall panel with current photos of the Paige Jackson High School alumni and their descendants, and inform visitors about the future of Paige Jackson High School and Black history in Jefferson County. It will prompt viewers to think about their role in reducing inequalities, access to quality education, equality, and discrimination, and how to end prejudice and discrimination. The intent was to have, and will be, to have handouts such as flyers, brochures, maps, and postcards available on this wall for people to take with them, including the following Paige Jackson High School exhibit items and a contact box and secure donation box nearby. The exhibit book will be based on an original publication, A History of Black Education in Jefferson County, West Virginia, 1865 to 1966, compiled by James L. Taylor, who's a Paige Jackson High School alumni and was in the WVU Hall of Fame, and produced in 2023. It was posthumously because he died in 2021. It is a compilation of personal It is a compilation of persons, schools, newspaper articles, and photographs related to the content. In its current form, it is black and white and is a 75-page glue-bound document. This book will be redesigned to be professionally printed and available for purchase. The new edition will include appropriate historical information, such as notable alumni, their impact, and stories that go beyond the closure of Paige Jackson High School and exemplify the importance of their experiences. With the completion of the tribute exhibit and book, we want to honor the remaining alums with a gift copy of their history. The publication is not actively used, and no other remaining copies are available for distribution. So this is what will be designed and expanded upon. An exhibit brochure will be a companion guide to the space and will be free for visitors to take with them. These can also be used as tourism interest pieces at visitors and welcome centers in the county. Postcards of photographs and illustrations of the school and student life are another possibility for take-home purchase items. So these 6 postcards with the visual history could be sold as art collectibles. The grant awarded includes postcards, brochures, and an exhibit book. The grant was fully funded for $27,128, and the brochures and the postcards and the items that will be created and books will result in the alumni having several years worth of material to pass out to any visitor in the room. So we're delighted to receive that grant along with the renovation of the room. My next update is the Ranson Elementary School update. So I'm going to once again give a visual presentation of the space. Hans, you can advance to the next slide. It's been a while since we've seen the rendering of the front of the school, so I included that this time. Next slide. You can keep going till you get to the space. I wanted to let you know of the traffic study we conducted that with our partners at ZMM, provided that to the DOH. There will be some new traffic patterns that appear once our school's there that we'll be working on as we construct the school. They will be turn lanes. Old Lee Town Pike will have a right turn lane of 100 feet with a 100-foot taper, and there will be no left turn lane. Off of North Mildred or 115, we'll have a right turn lane of 150 feet with a 200-foot taper, and a left turn lane of 250 feet with a 200-foot taper. So that's our planned upgrades for the intersection. This is a nice perspective of the school. You can see that we have fully constructed walls with insulated concrete forms. Those continue to be updated. We do have, if you look at the bottom right, a lot of Section A has the concrete down. The gym has also been poured, and they're working their way toward the dining hall or cafeteria and the kitchen. And that will fully round out Sections A and B behind the very center where the office and the main entrance is. I don't know, it's like dead center in that bottom right picture. The library lays directly behind that as well, along with 2 big sets of bathrooms. Next slide. That's just the entryway that we're working on. To the main entrance, you can see some parking lots. The bus loops up there, they're actually working on installing bases for lights in the parking lot. And by winter, we will have the first layer of asphalt down. Next slide. Just another view of the entrance. There's a view of the nice newly poured gym floor. We've gotten a lot of aerial views due to drones. This picture was taken late last week, and it shows the front space of that school, including the front entrance. The STEAM labs are to your right, and to the left is the gym, and the recessed area is the front entrance. That's just a closer view of that. And if you look at the top left picture, you can see the barrel roof starting to take shape over the STEAM lab, and that's been a very exciting development for me to see that shape. Here we're looking down the main hallway behind the office suite, and you can see how the workers have gotten high enough on that insulated concrete form that they are now needing some scaffolding, but they continue to bring that up to height, and you can see that very clearly on the picture on the left. Windows are very large. We have a well-lit space, so I took this picture looking out the Parent Resource Center, which overlooks the front of the building to show you how nice and large the windows are. I think lighting's very important for students and their learning. For safety, we will have smoke glass, so it will be, you can't see in the school, but we'll be able to see out. Another picture down a corridor, and on the right, you're looking back toward the C&D wings. This looks out over the bus loop to the left and to the right. There's that barrel roof. I'm just so enamored with it, I had to put a couple of pictures in, so excuse my indulgence on that. Next slide. And that's it. There again is your bond team, and if you have any questions for me, a 2-week look ahead on our project. They're still working ahead. They're going to be installing 6-inch fire lines into the building, continue with stormwater piping, installing underground electric conduit and pole bases. They're continuing to cut and fill some areas which will lead to the Leetown Road extension. In Area A, they're putting the slab on, and they'll continue the insulated concrete form walls. The same with B and C. And in areas C and D, in addition to doing those things, they're installing the metal door frames. They are continuing with geothermal wells. They're currently on well number 11, so drilling is going on for the geothermal on a daily basis. My final update for this evening, I have a partner for this update, and I'm very proud to introduce Lieutenant Ben Williams, our Jefferson High School PRO, and he's going to come forward. We want to discuss safety this evening and just give you a review. So Lieutenant Williams will be highlighting what we've been working on as a district. And in addition, we'll be following up with a parent meeting, which will be October 23rd, right here at Washington High School before the board meeting at 5 p.m. to provide parents with an opportunity to learn more about safety in our school district and have the opportunity to ask any questions. That will be led by Lieutenant Williams.
Good evening. Members of the board, Dr. Bishop, Ms. White, I'm grateful to be in front of you today to talk about our school safety that we've been working on for the past 7 years. When I first got brought into the school system as Jefferson High School's PRO about 7 years ago, we made a big change from our response protocols in the buildings. It was a push from West Virginia Homeland Security, and we were one of the first counties to jump on it. My first year here, I went to the training, and then we hired JT DeSorno, who's the officer that's here at Washington High, and so we've started moving forward with those, and we've really hit some steam here in the past several years, ran a couple drills last year. But I'm happy to go over those tonight with you. I'm extremely looking forward to October to present it to our families, as we have a large student population and a large county population considerable in the state of West Virginia. It takes community collaboration to make sure that our students stay safe. So I believe that community buy-in is important. They need to know, which is not what typically comes from a law enforcement officer, but I believe that our community needs to know. And so with the standardization of our protocols and the way that we respond to crises within our schools, whether it be from pre-K all the way up to senior and high school, our families in Jefferson County know how we respond as a school system. So we have created a visual presentation. You all have some of the, I believe you have the slides, and then I also brought an additional folder with some other particular stuff in there that we can review as well. So we switched the standard response protocol. It is from Jefferson County, Colorado. It is completely, the greatest thing about that program is it doesn't cost anything. The only thing that they try to sell you is they try to sell books on Amazon because schools can get grants for books. It's harder to earn money to pay for printing, to print a whole bunch of stuff, but you can get grants for books. So that's the mindset of the I Love You Guys Foundation. I encourage you to look it up. John Michael Keyes is the creator of that, and he's created through a partnership with law enforcement, first responders, and has now grown across the country. It is probably one of the most productive and impactful trainings I've ever been to. And upcoming this year, I actually get to go to Boston, and for the first time on the East Coast, they're actually doing the Train the Trainer courses. So this is, I say that in my 20-year career as a law enforcement officer, this is probably one of the best trainings I've ever been a part of, and I do believe in this program. So it is what we've moved to. We have switched all the signage in our buildings. We have educated all our principals. So this is the move that we've moved towards. It standardized the language. We used to operate off code systems, different codes. Some of our schools had different code words and things that they use within their buildings. This standardizes it with a standard response protocol. You guys actually have in your folders there that I provided what we have posted in our buildings. The first one that we come to is hold. Hold, again, simple language. That language is for a medical emergency within our building. A student's fallen down in the hallway. We want to provide some privacy for that student, or we have EMS coming in. Nothing happens to our educational environment. We pull our students back into a classroom. We continue to teach as normal until our principal gets on the building and says the hold has been released. So a hold is called generally for any spills in the hallway, anything that we have going on, ambulance coming in, and so forth. The second one that we had is secure. Secure is something's happening in the surrounding area around our building. Law enforcement's called the Board of Education or notified the school itself. They're in Shenandoah Junction serving a high-risk warrant, or somebody has fled, and we secure our building, meaning all students inside, business as usual, continued education, nothing is disrupted, but nobody goes out and nobody comes in. Secure. It used to be a term that we used as lock out, but got confused with our lockdown, which is our next one. Lockdown is our protocol for a crisis, and we'll move into locks, lights, out of sight. This is a move that the county has moved towards, and you'll actually see in the standards by the FBI. A lot of the information that I share in my parent meetings or any other safety training that I do is from the FBI. You just keep it simple, go with what the professionals are using. But a lot of times our old protocols that we used to use used to tell a teacher how they had to respond in a given crisis. This is what you shall do. We need our teachers to think, because an environment is different. Every school has its own differences, and why tell a teacher that they have to stay in a room when they can get outside of the building? So this empowers we try to empower our staff to make the best decision that they can, given the environment and the situation that they're dealing with. So it's locks, lights, and out of sight. If you can't get out of the building, we tell them to lock, cover up their windows, move the students out of sight. Lights are off, silence. This is what we would use in a crisis if somebody came into the building to harm our students. This is the one that we would move towards. The next one is evacuate. We would evacuate our building for multiple reasons. Chemical spill in a chemistry lab, a sewage backup, a gas leak. We had a gas leak at Jefferson High a couple years ago. We evacuated our building. We would evacuate to which I'll get to, our main reunification site, but we also have our secondaries, and we would reunify our students back with their parents. But we would evacuate the building and staff based off our protocols for each given building. And the last one is shelter. Shelter is what we would use for a tornado. We run our state-mandated tornado drills where we pull our students out, we shelter them in the hallway. We go through those different trainings with our students, and that's any other natural disaster that we'd have to move towards. But common language, all posted in our buildings, continue to go on from pre-K all the way up to seniors in high school. Continue to build off the language. The curriculum that they provide us is, it can be lowered down for the lowest level of our elementary to bringing it up and challenging our students as they get older. And we've worked on together collaborative, some trauma-informed training that we're trying to also implement with some of the drills that we're doing. So next to the really big one that has been a huge community collaboration that we've done, and I'm extremely proud of it. This has taken us about this has taken us a long time. Along with the standard response protocol, the first time in my life I actually heard we all worry about responding to a crisis, especially as a police officer. We respond to the crisis, we save lives, we do this, but we very rarely talk about how do we get our kids back to their parents in a safe manner. A law enforcement officer will tell you, I don't care. I stop the threat, but I understand after working with educators that we worry about our kids. We have to make sure they get back in the proper order. And the way that I learned through this training, which is is very eye-opening is that the healing begins as soon as the crisis is over. We have to get our students back to their parents in an orderly fashion and start mending because they have to come back to us one day. And so we have to build off of that. The reunification process that I learned through I Love You Guys Foundation is what we've adopted, but we have made it so that it is our own. We have chosen the Jefferson County Fairgrounds as our central spot for a reunification site. One, because it's central. Two, because it's close to a lot of infrastructure, DOH, the Sheriff's Department, the State Police, our 911 headquarters. It's also secure. It's got fencing, it's got buildings, it's got facilities that we can use. The weakness that we had 5 years ago was it had no Wi-Fi capabilities, no structure for us to use phone lines or anything like that. I'm happy to say that the county responded, and the county went in and put all that stuff in to make this possible. They put in lines for technology for computers, hard lines for computers, Wi-Fi capability, even though for some reason it doesn't work when the fair is out there. I don't know if they do that on purpose because you still can't make any phone calls. But the system is out there. We have gotten to test it, and it's been, we have actually run 2 drills. We ran some dry drills, walkthroughs with just adults and staff members to the point where we actually exercised. Mr. Walters allowed us to use his 5th grade class out of Wright Denny, and then we ended up using Miss Horn's whole Shepherdstown Middle School last year and ran drills. The first time we ran it with Mr. Walters' 5th grade class, we had low participation from parents, but it was nice when we did Shepherdstown. We had about 40 to 45 parents come out, actually go through the process. Brandon Caton attempted to speak to as many parents as he could to what do we gain, what do we lose, how do we improve this, how do we make it better. The idea behind the reunification plan, you have in the slideshow and available to you, you have the map that Hans created, which is the one that we will give to parents. And then I also gave you the geographical map that really shows you an aerial view of our reunification plan, shows you the secure sides. When we do share this with our parents, I will not give them that one. That is for you and you alone, just so you can see what we're working with. The idea when you move through the reunification process is that this is a reunification that we would use what I call not an administrative evacuation, but a law enforcement evacuation, where we take students from a classroom to a bus and a bus to a reunification site to protect them and to maintain a crime scene and to maintain the security of our children. We'll take them to the fairgrounds, receive them off buses. We'll empty them into our show barns that we have there, which we'll have prepped and ready for them. And they will stay there. So the idea is that they stay out of sight from cameras, out of sight from parents that show up. And we don't receive parents until we're ready. And so it seems like a walk when you see it on the map, and we've heard some complaints from parents as they walk, but the idea of a walk and having it drawn out like that is purposeful, because if we can show you a process and we can force you to think a little bit, then we're starting to get you out of your hysterical mindset and get you to calm down a little bit so that we can communicate with you rationally. So there is a mindset behind the madness to draw out some of the lines. And we have tested that, and we have shortened it a little bit because we have realized that for smaller schools, we should shorten the scope of but the fairgrounds gives us the ability to do that. When parents show up, they enter through the top gate or another gate if it's a smaller school such as Ranson Elementary or Wright Denny, as we found out, and they complete a complete circle. They come into a check-in, they check in after filling out a card, which you do have a card, and I'll get to that slide in a second. But they fill out the card, they go through, and we check it through Weebus because we have capabilities now with technology to check to make sure the guardian is the guardian or somebody's approved to pick up that student. And then we escort that individual to a greeting area where we can go find their student, bring their student, and they just make a complete circle back out. Never cross-contaminating, never seeing other students, protecting the privacy of our students. And then we've also built in some capabilities for those, unfortunately, that are going through the trauma and, their student is not there. So we've had those built-in capabilities there as well. It's been tested. We've picked up some flaws, and we'll continue to test it as much as Ms. White lets us. I think we learn a lot every time that we run drills out there. The community has responded, and it seems to go well. It's also a place where we can keep media, give us a distance, give a focal point for the superintendent to be out there, the sheriff or other first responders to make a unified statement, and also keeps people from the trauma site, where if we come out and tell our parents where your students are going to be, It keeps them from coming and being part of the problem at a given location. You know, unfortunately, I hope that we're wasting our time and we never use this, but we are prepared and prepping to run it. The card in itself was a hard sell at first, because why, in the day and age where we have cell phones and so forth and technology, why fill out a card? But again, the mindset behind the card, it's very simplistic. It's just name of student, grade of student. You know, it is to get an adult to start thinking, because in a crisis, they may not be thinking clearly. And just to get some simple answers can kind of get them back into that thinking mindset where we can communicate and get them reunited with their student. Also, it's a checks and balance. The cards that we have are perforated, so once they fill at the top part and they check in with the Weavis station, we rip the bottom part of the card off and we give that to them, and that shows me that they've already been through the process and that they can continue on with an escort to go get their child. The bottom half of that card they give to a runner, which will go into the individual building where their student may be, go get that student, bring that student out, sign off, time the student left, and then we hold on to those cards just as an extra checks and balance that this is the said student when they signed out and who they left with. And then again, they leave the facility. All that is in I'll go in more detail with our parents, so we'll be going through that process, but that's also in detail, and you have a copy of the card as well. Some other things that we wanted to address with our student or with our parents when we get to meet them is just simple home safety. We find some of the tragedies that we've experienced here just recently come down to some home safety things to be mindful of. Prescription drugs is a big thing that we deal with in our community. It's nice to go over those things, talk to our parents about where they can dispose of old prescription drugs, talk about the importance of monitoring what our students have, even remind our parents how to let their student bring prescription drugs to school and how you go about the process, the paperwork. Gives us an opportunity to maybe educate our parents a little better. Weapons. I think it's important that we address weapon safety. If you're an avid shooter or a hunter, to have reminders that our students are curious. They're young, whether they're young folks in elementary school or high schoolers, it's important to keep those things locked away. And just, I think that would be a good reminder for JT and I to have those conversations with our parents and talk about gun safety. And don't be a stranger. I think the biggest thing I find, especially with older children, is that our parents are absent. Whether it be from work life or just in general, they're in the day of technology where they don't have to sit in the same room to watch a television. I think it's a gentle reminder, and I try to take those opportunities every time I have those conversations with our parents, that go through your child's phone, check it. Be up to date with some of the applications that are out there. Don't be a stranger to the room. Go in there and check it out. Make sure know your parent, know your children's friends and their parents and so forth. So I think it's a good reminder to push our parents to stay connected to their students. We can only do so much, and when you can talk to a parent that knows their child, that really helps out a lot. And let me make sure that I think that's. This is my favorite slide and something I tell our parents. It takes all of us, and it's community collaboration. That's my favorite word, inclusion, not to include everybody. It's a lot of times I want parents to know how we deal with student situations, and some parents don't expect that when they call and deal with a law enforcement officer, and you try to include them in the process of trying to help their student. I think it's important as we try to change the way that we provide safety for our students and our staff, that we need to include our community. I think the important part of that, which we're going to start in October, but I think that it's important that it be part of our opening days of school, is that we have a safety night, whether it's part of every individual school or we do it at one school, and provide parents the opportunity to come in and review the protocols, understand how we respond to crises, ask questions, go over the signage, go over the cards, have discussions. Talk about trends, things that are happening. There's things that we see with their students that they may not know. But it takes all of us. Push our parents to be familiar with the student handbook. That's a big one for me. And I can say as a parent of 4 that I can say that sometimes I do just think my wife's going to do it all, but it is important to know that the student handbook has a lot of the answers that you need. Just did that with a parent the other day talking about parking. We refer to the student handbook. I'm glad to review it with you, but it's important to know those things. But the reminder that it does take all of us. We're all contributors, and we're all stakeholders in this. And whether you have students in one particular school or the next, it takes all of us. And if we all practice it and do our best with keeping our students safe and standardizing it, which the district has done effectively and is trying to push through drills, I think that we'll see some good things in our county with protecting our students. Happy to answer any questions, if there are any.
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, it might be a little bit off the topic, but you did mention weapons and prescription drugs. I'm wondering the extent of any drug problems in the schools, or at least where you're working. Also, you know, drugs, smoking, I guess vaping, is that still a problem? Can you?
Absolutely. I mean, it's an absolute, vaping is a huge trend with our youth, and it's not going away anytime soon. We have, in our middle schools, we have the vape detectors. We do some vape education. We've started trying to standardize how we deal with discipline across the board for vaping, because the honest truth of it is we hope to impact it sooner. Unfortunately, we're seeing younger students that are experimenting with vaping, and the accessibility is a huge problem right now. And educating our parents. Again, going back to the education of parents, a lot of our parents don't know what they're looking at. A lot of parents don't understand what that device looks like. To be able to have that opportunity to educate parents of what it is. A lot of our staff don't. It's JT and I take opportunities to educate our staff what they see. I think that, again, that information getting out to our communities is best. But yes, ma'am, it is a huge trend within our schools. We do our best, and we're not, in my opinion, we're not even really making a dent. It's a hard fight.
So it's just vaping, not any harder drugs or?
In the schools, the trends that I see in the schools typically are the vaping, tobacco, and then also the dab pens, which is THC. And THC, as in vaping, is extremely difficult because it doesn't smell anymore. It doesn't give off the marijuana smell that is distinct. It is very hard to pick up on. Some of the new stuff that is coming up is higher in content, and it does give off a smell, which gives us a better direction to confront that. But a lot of that stuff is odorless now and is very difficult. So again, it goes back to educating our parents, getting them informed, and also educating our staff, and also educating our students, which is part of some of our discipline process in educating them in the stuff that they're putting into their bodies.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Sergeant Williams, will we have any of the funding at all with the money I know the state received for prescription drugs, I think, through the Attorney General? I think they were trying to put a plan together for education as well. Will we be utilizing any of those funds, or do you think we'll receive any of those funds? Have we heard about any of those funds to address some of those issues that you know of?
I have not, ma'am. I don't know. I don't have any information on that.
Okay. And thank you very much for this. This is great work.
Yes.
So.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Yes, 2 meetings ago, you asked, or there was some discussion about legal fees, and at that time, I went back and worked with staff, and we put together the spreadsheet or the table that's before you. You can see the vendors on the left. I understand from Ms. Bratton now that we might be missing one. I can find out about that one. Between staff and Ms. Moss, they were able to pull these together. So Dinsmore, and you can see what we've used them for: special education, personnel, HR, and property issues, step 2, contract review, code interpretations, FOIA request compliance, some finance issues with repayment letters and reviews, Titles 9, 6, and 7. Bowls Rice is a professional development. We do open PO for $10,000 at the beginning of the year, and then when people sign up for particular professional development activities, then it's charged against that $10,000. So that's the way that's done. Crawford Law Group, Ms. White has used them for property closings and easements. At one time, many of you will remember when Epic provided an attorney, so we included that one. Briglia and Hunley was associated with Rockwool. Reed Smith, also associated with Rockwool, and Spinagle, also associated with Rockwool. The next 10, you can see the associated dollar amounts per year over the last 5 years. The next two slides take the, for Steptoe and Johnson and for Dinsmore, there's a bar graph there with the number of hours during 1 year, during this past year. So as an example, for Steptoe and Johnson for 22-23, there were 5 hours charged to legal services for the Board of Education, 67 hours for special education. So that's how that breakdown works for Steptoe. Steptoe also is often assigned by BRIM, so the insurance company. Then for Dinsmore for 22-23, you can see that nearly 250 hours associated with grievance or HR-related items, some special education, students, Title IX. So that's the breakdown. In order to do this, Mrs. Moss had to take individual invoices, and some of those are more detailed than others. So if she had done that for each vendor for the last 5 years, we would probably still be waiting on the report. It was very tedious work that she had to complete to even pull together these two. So this is a representative sample of last year for Steptoe and Johnson and for Dinsmore.
So Arnold and Bailey was last year.
I'm sorry.
Excuse me, Arnold and Bailey, that was
Okay.
just this last year.
Okay. And I can find that out and let you know.
Okay. Also, just one question. Dinsmore, is that Manning? Is he with Dinsmore?
Yes.
Jacob
Manning,
Yeah.
yes.
Okay, thank you. Just checking.
I have some questions if you're
Okay.
taking questions now. This open purchase order for Bowles Rice, what is an example of something that you foresee paying them for?
If, or when somebody attends a professional development session with them, could be in Morgantown, Charleston, wherever, if it's related to HR, let's say, and Mrs. Loring or some of the other HR department staff are going.
Okay. And the other issue is, so I'm not sure why Ms. Skinner requested that you do all this. I mean, my complaint and concern has been that even though the board agreed to remove the certain legal firm, we're clearly still paying, you know, this past year, close to 100,000. The fiscal year just started, so I don't know, since it's blank, does that mean there's no plans to continue paying them? And the other question now is it necessary to pay this much in legal fees? It's clearly averaging at least 200,000 a year. Is it the issue that if you had a lawyer, you know, in-house, that they wouldn't be able to do all the services needed, so there's no point in having an in-house lawyer? Can you?
I'll answer your first question first. We haven't had any invoices yet for this current year. So that's why for that particular vendor, it's blank at this point. So, as I say, I suspect the one you pointed out earlier from July 5th were for services completed prior to July 1. And that was just part of the billing cycle. The second question is, or the answer to your second question, as you well know, our business and profession is very complex, and we're dealing with different kinds of legal issues nearly every day related to special education and HR and easements, and to find one person to be able to do all of that and to be knowledgeable in all of those areas might prove to be difficult. I'm not saying that person doesn't exist, but it might prove difficult.
Yeah, I understand that. So I just asked if that's the reason that there isn't somebody, because you haven't been able to find a single lawyer or law firm to handle the variety. continues to be used even after several board members have complained about the law firm. So, I mean, that remains my concern, and, this just confirms what I, bring up, that we still pay, this past year was 90,000.
Yes.
So I guess it's still going to happen, and I'll just still vote against the consent agenda. Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Bishop, is that all for the legal services? Thank you. And next up, we have the 2023 state assessment results for Jefferson County Schools, and I believe you're going to need this.
I was going to say, I'll give you mine.
Good evening. Is the microphone okay? All right. Okay, what I have for you tonight are our state assessment results. In the slides that I'm going to present to you, you're going to see how we performed versus the state average. And then secondarily, how we performed in this year compared to last year. It's not school-specific tonight. We shared this data with principals who have already seen it, but we also encourage on the back end that they share all this data with their stakeholders at the school, and most of all, own the data. What you're going to see tonight is not the balanced scorecard. I'd be glad to come back and present that and all the different pieces of the balanced scorecard. This is just specific to achievement data that you're going to see tonight. And for those who are listening tonight and would like to access data on the public site, there is a site called Zoom West Virginia. All you have to do is put that in your browser, and you can get any data for Jefferson for not only this year, but previous years. And again, that's the West Virginia Department of Ed site. So, Hans, if you could put that presentation up. Next slide, please. So the first slide you're going to see is mathematics by grade level. Just a reminder for those who are listening and don't know the whole how we do assessing in West Virginia. We assess in grades 3 through 8, as well as grade 11. So what you will see on the first slide is mathematics. Jefferson County's in the blue, and West Virginia is in the gold. So concerns that you can see right away are that in grade 3 and grade 4, the state exceeds Jefferson County in mathematics. As you move up into the middle school grades, you'll notice the improvement across grades 6, 7, and 8 in mathematics that we'll also see later on. So again, the first slide is math, and it's us versus the state. The next slide that you'll see is math again. However, what we're doing in this slide is we're comparing ourselves to us, how we did last year. So grade 3, so in the previous slide you saw that we were below the state average. The good news is if you look at grade 3, you'll see a significant increase over last year. So despite the fact that grade 3 was below the state average, we had a significant increase of 7 percentage points in third grade math. Also, you'll notice again, middle school improvement, and then at grade 11 that we have had concerns, the math showed actually a decrease at grade 11. Next slide, please. So the next slide is the same slide that we just did previously in the beginning. This is reading. with us compared to the state. So again, you'll see that grade 3 concern again, that we are below the state average in grade 3. But once again, as you get to the middle school, the growth that we have seen at the middle school. Traditionally, at the high school, we have been far above the state average, and we continue to be above the state average at grade 11. And then the next slide is, again, reading, us compared to last year. So you'll see the grade 3 concern at this point. If you remember in math, we had improvement. In grade 3, in reading, we had a dip. All the other grade levels, with the exception of 11, have shown increases. And you'll note again the middle school improvement from grades 6 through 8. So the next slide, we are assessed in science in 3 different grade levels. Next slide, please. And you'll notice that in grade 5, grade 8, and grade 11, we are above the state average in science and have been for many years. The next slide compares us to last year, and being a science teacher myself, I'm concerned about this. You'll notice that we have a dip in science across all 3 grade levels from 2022 data to the 2023 data. The next slide that you're going to see is all of our data by subgroup. So your very first column you'll see is the all group. So in mathematics, we had 37% of our students proficient in math. And then you'll notice all the other groups across there: Asian, African American, Hispanic or Latino, multiracial, Caucasian, students with disabilities, and our economically disadvantaged group. So all those different categories. The next is the same slide, except this is reading. You'll see a all group of 47%, so 47% of our students in Jefferson are proficient in reading. And then again, the breakdown by subgroup as you go across that chart. And then finally, you'll see the same data for science. 35% of our students in Jefferson County are proficient in science. And again, you'll see all of the other subgroups listed. So that concludes the data presentation for tonight. I would be honored to come back at some point as part of a strategic plan presentation to let you know what we are doing to help improve student achievement in Jefferson County. It'd be excited to let you know what we're working on. So I will open it up for any questions.
I have a question.
Go ahead.
What do you feel is an acceptable percentage? I mean, do you think it's acceptable to be doing better than the state? I mean, what is the goal?
No way. We should be doing far better than the state, in my opinion. Yeah, I don't think that's an acceptable percentage.
I mean, it's nice the reading, you know, for the 11th grade reading, that's 58%. What is the goal? Like, what is an acceptable goal?
Well, I think each school is looking at continuous improvement. So they take where they are and they want to go to a certain place. So I work with each principal individually on their own personal goals and also help them with their school goals. But ultimately the goal is much the same that you would see in Dr. Bishop's goals, somewhere in the neighborhood of 5% improvement every year. So really our focus is based on continuous improvement from one year to the next.
Okay, and then my other question, I know that this is the way that the state presents the subgroups, but, you know, it's not really giving us a lot of information when, for example, Asians, 52%. How many Asians are there? You know, if there's only 10 and 6 of them did well, or 7 and 6 did well, you can't compare that to hundreds of children in Is it possible to show the actual numbers when you present this in the future? I mean, I guess I can go dig this up myself, correct? It's on
Sure.
Zoom.
I'd be glad. Yeah, my goal tonight was to try to give you a broad overview, but I'd be glad to come back at any point and be more specific with the data.
Well, I just think it gives more accurate information. Do you agree? Because it's especially, it looks like, thousands of Asian children are doing so much better than everybody else, and that's not the case because there's so few in certain areas. So that's been my concern with the Jefferson County school system, that I haven't seen any real solid interpretation of data, like in the past when, I pointed out that it wasn't that African American children were doing so poorly. It was more so that low income children, and that there were more African Americans in that group, or that there were certain schools where the African American children weren't doing as well. So those are the things that we really need to know. That, I recall that across the board at Washington, they were basically 30% whites, Hispanic, and Black children, equally proficient in math. But no one could, it wasn't reflected in these general scores because they're, like I said, and like you mentioned, this is just across the whole county. It would just be more helpful and more insightful to break it down for somebody, if there's somebody at the board office that is able to do that kind of thing. I mean, I know you are able to, it's just, is that in your job description or do you all do that? Do you go into the data and look at where there are areas, within each school where there are problems, or where schools are doing something very well for certain subgroups? Does that make sense?
It does, and we are able to break this data down any possible way that the board would want us to do that. We have people in my department who are very savvy with that.
Well, I just think telling us that, Asians 52% success, proficient, it doesn't mean a lot because we don't know how many there are. When I know there's at least, there's a couple thousand, several thousand, I guess, white children. But then this, yeah, so anyway, it would just be helpful to know what we're really looking at. And can you provide a breakdown of the schools? And because I know that particular year when I spent hours on my own looking through it, there was one particular school where African American children had an 8% success proficiency rate in math. And that was the main school that brought down the number for the whole county. But was anything done about that? Did anybody look at, well, it says 8%. How many African American children at that school actually took the test? And because that's more meaningful to me instead of just looking at these numbers on on the surface. I mean, I just assume that somebody does that, naturally. But maybe you don't have that time or nobody's ever initiated it. Do you all do that?
We definitely break down this data further by student, by subgroup, by standard. One of the things that's really important for us to know is which of the standards that we teach are we the weakest in, that we need to see the most improvement. So there's a variety of ways to break down the data. We do that, and the schools also do that too. We have people, again, in my department who help our new principals disaggregate this data so it's more meaningful for their teachers in helping to improve.
Okay, I was just, concerned because, I mean, I understand this is general, but I just want to make it clear or just to understand what the school system is doing, Like 69% of the Asian students were proficient in reading. But again, how many Asian students are there? Anyway, thank you very much.
You're welcome. Thank you for your feedback.
Oh, I was just going to say, Mr. Banks, I know that we get a more detailed breakdown by school during the LSIC meetings, so I'm sure we'll get that information then. Quick question for you. The grades 3 through 8, that is a state assessment, correct?
Yes,
And grade 11, that is the actual SAT, correct?
yes, correct.
I know it would be impossible for 3 through 8 because of the fact that it's a different test, but for grade 11, is it possible to get the comparison for Jefferson County, for West Virginia, and for the nation?
Sure.
Just to see where we are on that, because, yes, we're doing better than the state, but, what does that mean? It would be a much clearer picture if we knew how we were comparing nationally, I think.
Sure, no problem.
And, like I said, I know we can't do it 3 through 8 because you don't want to compare apples to oranges, but since we know it's the same test for grade 11, I think that would be helpful.
Okay, sure.
Thank you.
Mr. Banks,
I just want to add.
go ahead. Go ahead.
I just feel like waiting till the LSICs, in January, February, March, that's kind of, I feel like this is the time to look at the information and make the changes now, not 6 months from now. And I think that the SAT for the 11th graders, what matters most is, I mean, if we only have 20% with the success rate, are those the students that are wanting to go to college and they're getting denied the promised scholarship because of it? So I think that's important too.
Mr. Osborne, did you have a comment?
I'm a little surprised at the third grade scores because historically we have, that was one of our strongest areas was third grade. Do you have any ideas on, not only was it in math, but it was also in reading, which is pretty shocking to me.
Yeah, I think the math shocked all of us because we really worked hard on math this past year. The reading, we have a new curriculum in place, CKLA. Our teachers are getting used to teaching that. It's significantly different. What we saw in reading across the board is we had 2 pilot schools that did CKLA the year previous, and they showed great growth in year 2. So we do believe that growth is on the way for reading, but grade 3 math definitely concerns us, and it's a focus for us for this year.
Thank you. Any other questions for Mr. Banks?
So if you just let Dr. Bishop know whatever type of data you'd like me to bring, I'd be glad to bring it back with some more specific data. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, we have no unfinished business and no new business. So we're down to board member comments and committee reports. Ms. Bratton?
I just want to congratulate all the students for Washington High School this past weekend. I believe it was their homecoming and then their homecoming court. Congratulations to everyone. I suppose Jefferson's is coming up, so congratulations to those students as well. Just keep your heads up high and just keep getting up. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Osborne.
I have nothing at this time.
Ms. Ogden? Dr. Joy?
Yeah, the cultural unity and diversity group met and we came up with several dates for the next meetings and events. And the next meeting is November 7th, and it will be focused on personal finance activities for students. And everybody's welcome, and more information will be provided. I wanted to bring everyone's attention to the fact that this is Hispanic Heritage Month, and it's a time to honor and recognize the contributions and traditions of our fellow Hispanic Americans. I got a call about the teachers who came to help us from other countries, and I understand that they are not used to our system. They're not used to our student behaviors, and so they're going through a lot. I know that there are teachers that came together and gave them furniture and things to help them, and the teachers are working hard to help encourage them. And so I wanted to recognize these teachers that have come from so far away to help the Jefferson County schools. And finally, for anyone who has been celebrating Yom Kippur, congratulations. It's time for us to eat. So that's all.
All right, thank you. And also, just a reminder, this past Friday was Service Personnel Day, so thank you very much for all the service personnel that keep the system going. I mean, you guys are the ones that get the kids to school, that feed them, that answer the phone calls of the parents, and I mean, just everything that you do is recognized, and we just appreciate it, so thank you. All right, next up, we have superintendent's comments. Dr. Bishop?
Yeah, 4 things for this evening. First, of school visitations, we have started those. The last 2 weeks, we've spent Wednesdays visiting TA Lowry, Driswood, North Jefferson, and C.W. Shipley. This week, because of a conflict, we only have 1 visit, and that's to South Jefferson. Our teachers and students, support staff are working extremely hard. We have seen lots of great things, encountered a lot of wonderful students who want to interact with us when we go in the classroom. There's typically a group of 6 to 8 of us that go, and oftentimes we'll split into 2 groups so we're not bombarding one classroom with a lot of extra people. But we have a lot of folks doing the right thing. So I have no doubt that those test scores will come up. The discipline protocols. So what you have before you this evening is really the continuation of work of a group of our parents who have been intimately involved with this, as well as staff. Dr. Gibson-Learn was also involved in many of these conversations and was a leader in this area. And what I have provided for you in the attachment are a list of interventions in addition to Policy 4373. Some of the conversations that need to occur. And the last time we had a parent meeting, I said, there has to be a consequence and a learning opportunity if you violate one of these, violate Policy 4373 and you're racially harassing somebody. Certainly there has to be a consequence. We also want to have a learning opportunity. So what you have is listed as a draft right now. Your feedback is invaluable in this process. We want to go ahead and start moving forward until we can get Neola policies firmly in place. We don't want to wait to be able to have some of these other learning opportunities available for students who violate this portion of Policy 4373. Board of Education training, just a reminder, I sent you that information by email on Friday. I just need you guys to let me know when and how you want me to move forward. So more information to come from the one vendor who said they would have me a proposal midweek if they were interested. And then lastly, the community meetings. So there's an attachment there. Next Wednesday, I'll have my first community meeting at Jefferson High School. Thank you to Hans for putting that together. He's been working with a business group. We're going to have a group of students who are going to pose questions to me and give me an opportunity to, one, interact with our students, but secondly, to answer some questions that are really important to them. And certainly the community's invited to attend as well. So that flyer is here attached for you tonight. It will be going out in more of a PR campaign moving forward after this evening. And more of those will happen.
Excellent, thank you. All right, so we do have an executive session to discuss number 41 and number 32 from the consent agenda under personnel. Is there a motion to go into executive session?
I just have a question. We didn't get to ask Dr. Bishop anything. Will there be an opportunity for the board to make comments on this policy that he's suggesting?
Yes, that's why I would like your feedback on that.
Is that now? Or?
No, you can email it to me. We can talk about it by phone, whichever you prefer.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Will you also meet with the parents that you've been meeting with feedback?
Yes, I've already shared the initial document with that group of parents. So any feedback that we receive will go back to them for comment.
Okay, thank you.
All right, so is there a motion to go into executive session to discuss number 41 and 32 from the consent agenda and personnel?
I make a motion that we go into
Executive session.
executive session
Thank
to
you, Ms. Bratton. Is
discuss
there a second?
32 and 41.
Thank you, Mr. Osborne. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, thank you very much.